Hello, everyone, and welcome to the round 4 recap of Hart House Reading Week Open. So, as you saw in the previous 3 recaps of this tournament, I started the tournament pretty well. I had 2 wins and a draw, all against lower rated players, but I was pretty happy with my start. So, at 2.5 out of 3, I was actually one of the 4 leaders of the tournament. But I was facing the strongest player, the top seed of the tournament, Grandmaster Razvan Preotu. So I actually played Razvan in the previous Hard House tournament where I recapped the whole tournament in my channel. Um, and we played in the last round in that tournament. He was 4 out of 4. I was 3.5 out of 4. And he actually managed to beat me in the crucial last round game to win the whole event with 5 out of 5. And he actually beat me with the black pieces in that tournament. So in general, just to give you a little bit of context about Razvan, he's actually a player who's known to be really, really good with the white pieces. And in the recent chess Olympiad, he was representing Canada. And the strategy for the team was to actually do something that Razvan gets white in most of the rounds because he's so good with the white pieces. He can beat many strong grandmasters. And he actually managed to beat a couple of 2600 grandmasters in the Olympiad. And he was kind of the superstar for the Canadian national team. So going to this game, facing Razvan with the black pieces is of course not the most desirable pairing that I wanted, but of course I was up for the challenge and I was happy to give it a go and see how I can do against Razvan with black. So historically, Razvan used to have a pretty predictable repertoire, maybe like 3-4 years ago. Like he was always playing e4, and against Caro-Kann, which is my main opening, he was mainly a 2 knights Caro-Kann player. So of course this is something that I had to look at, but I didn't look at it that much because I saw he plays much more dangerous stuff these days. So like for instance, I saw that in Caro-Kann he plays the advanced variation recently. And initially I was thinking to, so after e4, c6, d4, d5, e5, and c5, I was planning to maybe go c5 and try this line, but I saw that after knight f3 he takes both with a knight and a queen. I think I saw a game against Naroditsky where he took with a queen, but most of the other games he was taking with a knight. So I was like preparing both of them is a little bit too much. So I was planning to go bishop f5 and I saw he plays the short variation. And here as well, I had a quick look at some of the lines where black actually manages to equalize, but not fully equalize. Like usually black gets like slightly worse endgame after knowing like 20 moves of theory. So I was kind of scared that he's going to go for that. And even if I remember everything, he's still going to grind me in the endgame. And besides all of that, in the recent Olympiad, as I mentioned, he beat many strong grandmasters in that tournament with the white pieces. And he had this new venomous prep with knight f3 g3, the ready opening. And I think he beat the Turkish superstar Yagiz Khan Erdogmus pretty easily, actually, with the white pieces with knight f3 g3. He just got a much better endgame, and he was able to convert flawlessly. So that was another line which I was kind of scared of because I saw the great positions that he was getting and the good prep that he had with knight f3 g3. So I had a brief look at my own ideas against this as well. And when I showed up to the game, he decided to go with knight f3. So I was actually honestly pretty happy because with knight f3, there's more chance to get a game rather than just trading everything into an endgame in a short variation where he's slightly better and he's just going to torture me forever. So I played d5 and now he plays g3. And here, historically, I'm usually like a knight f6, e6, bishop e7 player, but I realize I struggle against these King's Indian attack type of positions where they get this pawn to e5, they put the bishop on f4, and then just start attacking with some h4, h5. And computer usually like those positions for black, claims that it's like minus 0.4, minus 0.5, but I realize in practice it's not so comfortable for me. So I'm playing this line these days with g6. And the idea is that after bishop g2, bishop g7, he's if he goes d3, I'm going to go e5 and grab the whole center. And that's not what you really want with the white pieces. Like usually if you want to fight for an advantage, you shouldn't give up the whole center like that to black. And against the more challenging move d4, the thing is now white doesn't have the idea of going with a King's Indian attack type of thing. So he played d4, of course, the most challenging move in the position, and we get some sort of symmetrical Grunfeld structure. So here the most common move is knight f6, but the thing is, after castles, c4, usually black plays c6. There's also other lines with d takes c4, of course, like white goes knight bd2, we give up the pawn. Like there's a lot of theory here, of course. I used to play this for a while, but then after takes, knight c3, knight c6, knight e5, white usually gets to play against this weakness on c6, which is kind of annoying in the long run. Like I didn't want to do that. There's also, like, aside from that, there's also these queen b3 lines, which are extremely tricky. So recently I came up with this idea, which is the second most popular move, but I actually really like it, and that's the move c6. So with c6, my idea is to anticipate c4, and once he goes c4, my idea is to take and then try to hold on to the pawn on c4. So Razvan castles, I play knight f6, and now he plays c4, and as I said, my idea is to take the pawn and try to hold on to my extra pawn on c4. So if he plays a natural move like queen c2, knight c3, or knight bd2, then I'm just going to go b5 and hold on to my pawn and try to clog the diagonal with knight d5. So of course the best move is to play a4, and that's what he played. Now, the idea that black usually plays in this position is to play knight to e4, and that's what I played here. So the idea with knight e4, it looks like a weird move, just to put the knight in the middle of nowhere. The idea is that I want to bring my knight back to d6 and try to consolidate my extra pawn on c4. So here there are a lot of moves again. There's queen c2, there's knight a3, there's knight c3. Razvan played knight c3. I played knight d6, defending my pawn on c4. Now he plays e4. So here black is up a pawn, but in return white has this nice big center in the middle of the board. So I was still in prep. I played bishop g4, pinning the knight and putting more pressure on the d4 pawn. Of course, Razvan defends at bishop e3, and now I played the last move that I had in my prep, queen to c8. Like I had more preparation, but I didn't get to use it. I will show a little bit later. So the idea with queen c8 is that I anticipate h3. I kind of like stop him from playing h3 and kicking my bishop away, and in some cases I might even go bishop h3 and try to trade the light squared bishop. And with a queen on c8 rather than d7, first of all, the queen is less vulnerable, and then the rook can also come to d8 and put more pressure down the d file. So in this position, the most common move, which was played in like 10 out of 11 games, is the move queen e2. But Razvan played a move that was completely new to me, and I was kind of shocked by it, and that's the move h4. So with h4, it looks like my bishop gets even more consolidated on g4, so I was initially pretty happy with that, having this nice pin on g4. But then I realized maybe his idea is that in some lines, once he moves the queen, he's going to go knight h2, try to kick my bishop, and then try to attack me with h5, h6. So that was kind of an interesting idea by him, but he was probably freestyling. Like he was out of prep. He spent like 9 minutes here to play h4. And the main move is queen e2. I didn't talk to him after the game, but maybe he thought I have too much prep in this main line. He just wanted to get me out of theory. I'm not sure. But he doesn't seem like that kind of guy to me, that if he knows the best move, he's going to just play something random just to get opponents out of theory. So I think he either couldn't remember his preparation or he wasn't that familiar with this line. So the move queen e2, usually black just castles, white plays rook a1, and now knight a6. And this is what I knew. Like this is what I would have played until this point. And I was looking at this position after the game, and I saw this new interesting idea that white actually has to play h3. to sacrifice the pawn for initiative. Like, I think this is the most challenging way white can play this line. And if black takes, white is going to take back. Queen takes h3, and now e5 comes. And all of a sudden, black is in a little bit of a trouble. Like, if I go knight f5 after knight g5, my queen is going to be in a really awkward situation. So the best move is actually to go knight to e8, which is very difficult to find if you're not familiar with it. And now white plays d5, and now again black has a very tough choice to make in this position. And if black doesn't know theory here, black can be lost in like 4 moves very easily. So this is an idea that I should look into if I'm playing with the black pieces. I didn't know that before the game, so if he had gone for this, I probably would have been in a lot of trouble. But yeah, it's something to look at and learn. Anyways, Razvan plays h4. I just castled, played queen to d2, trying to trade off the bishops. So I wasn't sure whether I want to trade the bishops or not, so I decided to play rook d8 to always have this option of putting the bishop on h8 if it's necessary, and keeping the pressure on the d4 pawn. So here, actually the best move for Razvan is to go bishop h6 and just trade off the bishops and try to play in the center of the board. But I like this position after a move like knight b4 and a5, just consolidating my knight. And I like black in these sorts of positions because I usually prefer material over initiative. I love these long-term advantages when the dust settles, they're going to count at the end of the day. So I would have been happy to get this position anyways. And I think maybe Razvan also didn't like his chances in this position after trading the bishops, and he played this with bishop g5. One other thing was, I think maybe he wanted to provoke f6, weakening my light squares a little bit and my king side a little bit, and then play bishop h6, which made a lot of sense. And here, I made a huge mistake, which I just can't explain. I just don't know what went through my mind in this position that I made this mistake. It's just such a weird move. And when I made it, like 30 seconds after, I was like, what did I just do? I was too worried about my pawn on e7. And I saw I have f6, but for some reason, I was just a little bit too scared to go f6. I don't know whether it was like lack of chess understanding in general, or a little bit of a psychological pressure of playing a much stronger player. I just didn't want to give him these long-term weaknesses. I don't know. I played rook to e8, just getting my rook out of the open file and defending the pawn. And I remember when I played this move, Razvan gave me such a weird look, and he was like, "What are you doing, bro?" And that's when I was like, I think I messed up. And what I could have done was just simply go f6. He's going to go and trade the bishops, that's fine, but I'm just going to take, and my pawn f6 is actually very useful at stopping knight g5. And now I can just bring my knight to b4 and try to exploit these weak squares here. And my king is pretty safe after knight f7. So black is actually up a pawn, and white has little to no compensation, like very close to no compensation here. And black is doing amazing. But after I played rook e8, he simply goes e5, and here I was like, oh my god, I'm in trouble, because the knight doesn't have any squares backwards. Like, it literally has only one square on f5. If I go f5, I'm going to lose a piece after knight h2, because my bishop is hanging. If I play h5, then f3 traps the bishop, and if I go bishop h5, then g4 wins the piece with a fork. So even knight f5 is not possible. I was lucky to have, like, of course I can take and then go knight f5, but that gives the bishop pair. But I'm lucky that I had this move f6 too, counterattacking the bishop on g5. And here Razvan played a move which really surprised me in this position. I was like, why? So Razvan played bishop to f4, which looks like an actual move, just dropping the bishop back and attacking my knight. I don't know whether he forgot that now the f7 square is available for my knight, or he simply misevaluated one of the lines. But I thought taking the knight is much more dangerous, because I have to take the bishop, and now after d takes e7, it's good to eliminate this knight on f3, bishop f3, bishop f3. Maybe here he was worried of g takes h4 in this position. But then after rook e1, the pawn on e7 is just way too good. So the best I have is to simply take, and then after h takes g5, white is much better because I have such a lack of development on the king side. And the more important thing is that I'm not even up a pawn. So the material is equal. My pawn on c4 is a little bit weak. You might argue white's pawn on d4 is also weak, but d5 is going to come very soon, and I don't have anything to stop it. And after that, he's going to have a better pawn structure, more development, and I'm definitely in a little bit of a trouble at least here. Still playable, but I would not have been happy to play this position against him. But after bishop f4, I played knight f7, and I was like, okay, I'm back in the game. Actually, recently, maybe around a year ago, I played a game where my opponent played this setup with a knight on f7, bishop on g7, and pawns on f6 and g6. And even though Engine loved white's position in that game, I found it very difficult to break through this. So I was like, this is much better than that position I had on that game, which was a completely different opening. And I was like, okay, I know from practical perspective, if I'm white, I'm going to struggle breaking through this. It's actually not so easy for white to prove something on the king side now with all these solid pieces defending the king. And I'm just claiming I'm up a pawn, and I'm asking Razvan to show me the money, show me the compensation. So he played rook e1, I played knight a6, and here I was starting to get a little bit optimistic. I was like, I'm up a pawn, and I don't see an instant compensation. And here he starts going with a wrong plan. So he plays queen to e2, attacking my pawn on c4, which looks like a very natural move. The best he had was actually not so easy to play for a human, in my opinion. He should have just given up the tension, taking on f6, trading the rooks, and now playing d5. This might look natural to you to begin with, but then after rook d8, there's a lot of pressure down the d file. After rook e1, queen f8, like it's not so clear how white is going to proceed. Computer claims that after queen d4, it's like equal, but I would say this is a very complicated position with all three results possible. And it's very difficult for white to play like this, knowing all of that in advance, like putting the queen, the side of the bishop, and the rook. Like, of course, now you see that there's nothing, but in a real game, like, of course, queen b4 is a move. Like, I don't even know how to evaluate this position. So I understand why Razvan didn't want to go for that. He played queen e2 attacking my pawn, but now I have this very nice move, queen to e6, guarding the pawn on c4. And the thing is, now if he takes, I take back, my queen is well guarded by the rook and the bishop. And I'm still claiming I'm up a pawn with a very solid king. So here what he should have done was just to admit his mistake and go back queen d2. Because queen on e2 is pinned and it's blocking the rook. But after queen d2, now I can get a much improved version. Rather than the queen on c8, I can put my queen on d7. And of course here it's much better, putting pressure on d4 and also getting ready to double on the d file. There's no e6 because my bishop guards the square, so black is slightly better here. Razvan played queen e3 in this position though, and I was like, wait, what is he doing? I'm going to go knight b4, and now I'm threatening knight c2, attacking the rook and the queen. There's also knight d3 coming, and knight is also coming to d5 in some lines, and I'm just rectifying my pawn structure. So I didn't understand his move, but then once I played knight b4 and he played his next move, it struck me like a lightning for a moment. I was like, oh my god, did I miss something? Am I losing? He played d5. Very interesting move. So it's not a top engine move, but I think based on what he did so far, it's the best practical chance, because otherwise black is just positionally winning up a clean pawn and like all these weak squares. So he played d5, and the idea is that whether I take with a knight and we make this trade, or I just take with a pawn, he's going to put this knight on d4, attacking my queen on e6, and then e6 is also coming attacking my knight on f7, and there are going to be tactical difficulties for sure. So here, initially I was like trying to evaluate what's going on. Am I losing? Am I in big trouble or not? But then after a long think, I realized that I'm actually okay. I'm doing well. I didn't see much from him. And I wonder what he missed when he went for this plan with queen e3. Maybe he missed. I will show you what I thought he missed, what I think he missed. So he played d5, and I took with a knight. He takes back. I take back with a pawn. Now knight d4. So here I'm up 2 pawns, but now the knight is attacking my queen, and e6 is coming. My pawn on d5 is also loose. So here I found the best move, queen to b6. Keeping an eye on e6, d4, b2, like all the important squares. The only bad thing about it is that it relinquishes the control of the d5 pawn. So I think maybe one thing he missed was that after bishop takes d5, he's just going to lose after e6 because I attacked the bishop. And if he moves the bishop away, I'm going to take on e5 and just fork the bishop and the knight. So that's one line that he might have missed. And the other thing he might have missed was that after e6, I'm going to put my knight on e5, and this bishop is actually not trappable on g4. The bishop is going to wiggle its way out from f5 to d3, and he's actually not going to be able to win a piece. So the thing is, after e5, e6, knight e5, the pawn on e6 is going to hang. So he decided to sack the third pawn to deflect my queen and now play e6, so that after knight e5, f3, there's no bishop takes e6 possible. But as I said, I think maybe that's the point he missed. But even then, I think I can still maybe get like 5 pawns for a piece in some lines with bishop h5. So maybe he missed that he doesn't have bishop takes d5 there. I'm not sure. We didn't talk after the game. So I played bishop f5. And my idea was to play bishop d3 next and attack the rook on f1. And of course, he decides to take and then play h5. Now I'm up 3 pawns, and I was very optimistic. I was like, oh my god, I'm going to win this game. That's my chance. I got to stay focused. I'm up on time. I'm up 3 pawns, and I really need to not choke this. So I played knight d3, very normal move, attacking the rook on e1 and the bishop on f4. And now he really decided to throw the kitchen sink. So if he goes rook d1, I'm just going to go queen b6, trade the queens off the board. And once I do that, I'm just going to be up 3 pawns in the endgame. And with all these pawns coming down the board and the pawn on b2 also hanging, he's going to be in trouble. He's going to be losing in this endgame. So he decided to complicate the matters by playing h6, attacking my bishop on g7. But here I have a very nice move which I was able to find in the game, which gives me a completely winning position. Of course, there are many winning moves here, but try to find the best one. Pause the video and think. Yeah, I found the best move, d4, deflecting the queen on e3 from defending the rook on e1. So first things first, if the queen goes to e2, I'm going to take the bishop on f4 and then just win the 4th pawn on h6, and that's going to be very easily winning because my bishop is also getting into the game. And if he takes on d4, I'm just going to take the rook, and the point is after h takes g7, I'm going to take this bishop on g2 as well. I'm up in exchange and a bunch of pawns, and my king is completely safe. And I don't have that bad bishop on g7, that bishop that he's trying to play against. So given all of that, Razvan tried queen to d2, trading the queens, losing the exchange, but now he's trying to claim that my bishop on g7 is not going to come into the game, and maybe with his 2 active bishops, he's going to have some chances. But of course, I started using the pressure of this bishop on the h6 pawn by playing c3, attacking the bishop on d2. So now he's in a little bit of trouble because if he takes and takes, then I take on h6 and my bishop gets active and I'm up a bunch of material. So he tried bishop f4, and now I had a decision between bishop h8 and bishop f8, and I chose the best move, bishop to f8, because now this ties this bishop on f4 down to the defense of the h6 pawn. Yes, the bishop on h8 and f8, they don't have any moves. The bishop on h8 is actually totally dead, while the bishop on f8 kind of ties this bishop or maybe a rook down to defending the h6 pawn. So now the game is almost over. The pawn is coming, a5, a4. I'm going to take and just push these pawns. So Razvan played bishop f1, and now I played a5. So the idea is to go a4 next and just take and just push the pawns. So understandably, Razvan goes b3. I play rook a c8, trying to push these pawns forward. So I just bring my rooks to the files behind the pawns. And now d3 is a huge threat. If I get d3, I get 2 connected pass pawns on the 3rd rank. So Razvan plays rook d1, trying to stop d3. What now? c2 comes. He goes rook c1, now d3 comes. Now d2 is coming. So now he goes bishop d2, and now you see the point of bishop f8. Now with this bishop kind of tied down to stopping the d pawn, I can sack my bishop on h6. And if he takes, I'm going to go d2. And after takes, rook takes d2, I'm just going to easily win the game. So he tried f4, trying to lock in my bishop one more time. But now his own bishop is also completely tied down to defending the d3 pawn. And now I try to exploit the weakness of the e6 pawn. So I play rook d6, king f2 comes. And in this position, I almost went for rook takes e6, seeing that after bishop c4 I can sack and then just go rook e2. But then I saw there's bishop takes d3. I knew that this is for sure winning as well, but I was like, I'm not going to lose these beautiful pawns. So I just played rook c5, trying to deflect the bishop. Of course, it gives him the option of going bishop d7, but I saw I can sacrifice the exchange back and now play rook to d5. Now I'm up 4 clean pawns and I'm winning the pawn on d7 as well. So after rook a1, he's trying to activate his rook. I'm going to go b6 and guard my pawn. Now he plays b4. And the funny moment happens after rook takes d7 when I'm up 5 clean pawns. Not 5 clean pawns because he's winning one of them back, but 5 pawns. And I still have all of my pawns left on the board. So I was pretty confident at this point that I'm going to win this game, given the time situation as well. He has 4 minutes, I have 28 minutes, so I was like, there's no way that I make a mistake here. He took and played king d3. So again, I'm up 5 pawns, but I decided to give up the a5 pawn and trying to strengthen my pawn chain here. So I played e5. He took on a5 with a rook. Now if I go e4, there's rook takes f5 with some shenanigans. So I decided to play rook c7. Now if he goes rook a1 to stop me from promoting, I'm just going to go e4. Now there's no rook takes f5. And then I'm going to reroute my bishop to c5 and just kick the king away and just keep pushing. I have way too many pawns here. So he decided to go with bishop c1, and now comes the finishing touch, which I really liked. Again, there are many different ways to win this game, but I came up with d2. And the thing is, if the bishop takes it, I'm going to promote my pawn. After takes, I'm going to be up a full piece with at least 1 pawn. I think 2 pawns. I don't see a way to win one of the pawns back for him. So I decided to take with a king, but now after e takes f4, next move, my bishop is going to open up towards c1 with check. So the only thing he has here is to go king d3, but then after takes, bishop takes g2, my g pawn is promoting, my c pawn is promoting, and if he goes rook a1, I'm just going to promote, and next I'm going to promote the g pawn once he takes back my queen. Anyways, so we got this position, and in this position, he finally decided to resign the game in this funny final position with the triple pawns. So a huge and delightful win for me. My highest rated win, the first time I beat a grandmaster with the black pieces. And now I'm leading the tournament with 3.5 out of 4 points. So this was my 3rd grandmaster win. The first one also came against Razvan in Canadian Zonals. The second one was against Grandmaster Bator Sambuev, which I analyzed on this channel. And with this huge win, I also got myself to 2284 live FIDE rating. So I just need 16 more points now after this game to clinch the FIDE Master title, which requires the 2300 FIDE rating. So whether I can clinch into this tournament, we still have 2 more games left. So stay tuned. I'm going to try and upload more recaps as soon as I get more free. I will try to upload tomorrow as well my next game, which is going to be against another member of Canadian national team, Nikolai Noritsin. That's going to be a very interesting game as well. So stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next recaps. And make sure to let me know your comments about this interesting game in the comment section down below. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Have a great one. And